Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. So you know that feeling, right?
Yeah,
That stack of papers, the nagging task, the hours spent after school maybe trying to nail down a concept.
definitely.
We're talking about homework. It's a universal experience for most of us. But is it truly universal in its effectiveness?
It's a huge question. And it's a conversation as old as education itself, really. It sparks such passionate debates among parents, educators, students. Everyone has an opinion.
Absolutely.
So today, we're taking your sources. We've got a comprehensive dive into the research, expert opinions from, both sides of the aisle, and a fascinating look back at its history to really pull out the most important insights for you.
Right. Our mission here is to cut through all that noise, examine the actual data, and try to figure out when and how and for whom homework actually works.
Exactly.
You'll get a real shortcut to being well-informed, complete with some surprising facts, I think, and definitely some practical takeaways. Let's really unpack this.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's jump into the history books first. Who actually invented homework? Because the answer, well, it might surprise you. It's not as simple as you might think.
That's right. It's not like one person suddenly declared, let there be homework. The idea of learning beyond the classroom in its most basic form, it's ancient.
Ancient? Like how ancient?
Well, think about ancient Egypt. You had scribes practicing hieroglyphics outside of, formal lessons.
Okay.
Or in ancient Greece, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, they believed in written exercises to sharpen the mind. Even young Romans had assignments, things like math and literature, to complete at home. So it wasn't homework exactly as we know it now, but that concept of independent study, it was definitely there.
So no single inventor in the modern sense then. But there are a couple of names that often come up when we talk about its more structured development, right?
Indeed. There's Roberto Nevilis. He was a 16th century Venetian educator. He's often credited, though. Honestly, the historical evidence is a bit elusive.
Elusive, okay.
He's associated with tasks given outside of class specifically to reinforce learning. Then, moving much closer to what we recognize, there's Horace Mann.
Horace Mann, yeah, I've heard that name. 19th century.
Well, that's often called the father of American education. His reforms, which really championed discipline and academic rigor, they kind of paved the way for homework's widespread adoption, especially in the U.S. public school system.
So if it wasn't exactly ancient in its current form, why was this practice formally introduced? What were the big goals behind it?
Well, primarily it was about solidifying what students learned in class. That was key.
Reinforcement.
Exactly. But also about cultivating crucial life skills. Homework was seen as a way to build self-discipline, responsibility, develop good study habits, and teach time management.
Things you need beyond school.
Totally. These are all incredibly valuable, right? Not just for academics, but for navigating life in general.
And what's really interesting, I think, is that how people feel about homework, public attitudes, they haven't been static at all. It's really cycled through the years.
Oh, absolutely. The public attitude has swung like a pendulum. Before the 20th century, it's largely accepted, seen as a way to discipline children's minds.
Right.
But then, get this, by 1905, California actually banned homework for students under 15.
No way. Really? Banned it?
Yep. Can you imagine? And then in the 1920s, a group called Physicians Against Homework even formed.
Seriously. What was their argument?
They argued it kept kids indoors, prevented them from getting exercise and fresh air.
I bet my younger self would have signed right up for that group. More playtime.
Me too. But then, fast forward to the late 1950s, after the Soviet Union launched Sputnik.
Sputnik, the big game changer.
Exactly. Suddenly there's this national panic, right? And the push was for more rigor, more homework to accelerate learning and, catch up.
The pressure on.
Big time. But then, by the mid-1960s, the pendulum swung back again. Many started seeing it as a symptom of excessive pressure on kids.
Okay, so back the other way.
Then another renaissance in the mid-1980s, this time driven by concerns over declining test scores and global competitiveness.
Right, gotta compete.
And then, as the century turned, yet another backlash. Parents increasingly worried about student stress, mental health.
Which feels very current.
It absolutely does. It's truly an ongoing debate, and it has these really deep historical roots. It's fascinating.
That historical context is perfect because it brings us right into the heart of the contemporary debate. We've got these two clear expert opinions from Time for Kids that really capture this tension perfectly.
Yeah, they lay it out nicely. On one side, you have Janine Bempachat. She's a human development and psychology professor, and she gives a resounding yes to homework, especially for elementary school kids.
Okay, so she's pro-homework, particularly early on. Why?
She sees it as crucial not just for reviewing material, but for developing those vital learning habits. Things like learning to plan your time, manage distractions, persist through challenges, foundational stuff.
She makes a good point, too, that while you might not see immediate grade improvements for the younger students, the research actually suggests a payoff later,
Right down the line.
in middle and high school. Students who had that early homework exposure, they tended to be more positive about learning and actually perform better later on. Her key, though, and this seems important, is designing high-quality, enjoyable, and challenging homework.
Not just busy work, that's critical.
Definitely not busy work.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one side. What's the counterpoint?
Then we have Edda Kralovec. She's an education professor and co-author of a book called The End of Homework. And she argues a firm no.
A firm no. Okay.
Yeah, and she's quite open about her personal dislike for homework, both as a student and later as a parent. She finds many teachers and parents actually agree with her that it's often just a waste of time.
And does she back that up with research?
She does.
Yeah.
She points to research, like studies from Stanford University, showing that homework causes considerable stress in students' lives.
Stress is a big one. So the controversies are incredibly real then. We're talking overwhelming workload sometimes.
Definitely.
A lack of creativity in those traditional, maybe repetitive assignments.
Yeah, the worksheet grind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just serious concerns about whether it actually helps students learn in a meaningful way.
And layered on top of all that, we absolutely cannot overlook the critical issues of equity and accessibility.
That's a huge point.
It really is. Students from disadvantaged backgrounds often lack the resources we take for granted, right? A quiet space, reliable internet, maybe parental help. Homework often assumes those things exist.
And if they don't,
It can inadvertently widen educational inequalities. That's a significant concern. So this all leads us right to the big question. What does the broader research actually tell us about homework's real impact?
okay, let's stop speculating then and get into the hard data. We're diving into this really comprehensive 2006 meta-analysis. It's by Cooper, Robinson, and Patel, and it pulled together U.S. research on homework from '87 to 2003. Quite a span.
It is. A lot of study synthesized there.
So first off, how do they even define homework for this massive study? Seems basic, but definitions matter.
They defined it quite simply, actually. Any task assigned by school teachers intended for students to carry out during non-school hours.
Okay, so specifically outside of school time. No in-class stuff or clubs.
Exactly. And what's fascinating, and maybe not obvious, is that homework isn't always just about direct instruction. It can serve many purposes.
Like what?
Well, like opening lines of communication between parents and schools, or fulfilling administrative requirements, or even acting as a kind of public relations for the school, showing they're rigorous.
Interesting. Okay, so let's cut to the chase. What did they discover about a direct causal link between doing homework and actually achieving more academically? Does A cause B?
Right. So in the studies that were designed to experimentally test homework, the ones where some students got it and some didn't, controlling for other factors.
Gold standard, kind of.
Sort of, yeah. In those studies, there was a consistent and pretty clear positive effect on immediate unit tests.
Immediate unit tests, so short-term boost.
Exactly. Think of it like this. If you do homework right after learning a new topic in math, you're much more likely to do better on the quiz for that specific topic soon after. It's a tangible, short-term gain for reinforcing that new knowledge.
Okay, that makes sense. It helps right away. But what about the bigger picture? You know, those long-term gains like overall class grades or big standardized tests, does homework still show that direct link there, or does it get more complicated?
It definitely gets more complicated for those longer-term outcomes. While we see that strong causal link for immediate tests, it's just harder to establish that same direct cause and effect through experimental designs for things like end-of-year grades or standardized test scores.
Why is that harder? More variables.
Way more variables over time. However, when they looked at correlations, just the relationship from studies observing students in natural settings,
Real classrooms, real life.
yeah, there was still generally consistent evidence for a positive influence. It suggests a connection, even if it's not always that clear. A causes B relationship in the long run. A positive association is there.
Okay, so an association, but maybe not direct causation long-term. Here's where it gets really interesting, I think, for anyone listening, trying to figure out if homework actually matters for them or their kids. When does it make the biggest difference? Are there specific factors that influence how effective it is?
This is where the research reveals some incredibly important nuances. It's not a simple yes or no. The meta-analysis found really strong evidence that the homework achievement relationship differs significantly by grade level.
Oh, okay. How so?
For secondary school students, that's roughly grades 7 through 12, there was a robust and positive connection. Doing homework was linked to higher achievement. Pretty clear.
Okay. Older kids benefit. What about younger ones?
But for elementary school students, so kindergarten up to 6th grade, that connection was much, much weaker. In some statistical models, it was even slightly negative or basically non-existent.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Why? Why would homework be so much less effective, maybe even pointless, for younger kids, according to this data?
Well, there are several plausible reasons. For one, younger children just have a harder time ignoring distractions at home, right?
Totally. TV, siblings, toys.
Exactly. Makes focused home study much less effective. They also typically haven't developed strong, independent study habits yet. That takes time.
Ugh.
Plus, another factor could be the purpose of the homework. In earlier grades, teachers might assign it more for developing those very habits, like time management, responsibility, rather than purely for immediate academic achievement gain, which is what the tests usually measure.
So the goal might be different, even if it looks like homework.
It could be. Imagine trying to get a first grader to deeply grasp a complex science concept when they'd much rather be, building a Lego tower. The research really highlights how different developmental stages need different approaches.
Okay, so it's not just if you do homework, but crucially, who you are, your age, your grade level, and when you do it. What about another factor mentioned? Who is actually reporting the time spent on homework? Does that make a difference in the findings?
It does, and this is another really fascinating finding. The relationship, that correlation between time spent on homework and achievement, it was significantly stronger and more positive when students themselves reported how much time they spent. Compared to when parents reported the time. When parents reported it, that link was much weaker, often statistically insignificant, actually.
Huh. So what does that tell us? Are students just better at keeping track? Or maybe more honest? Or are parents maybe missing something?
It's likely a combination of things. Parents might only see bits and pieces of their child's homework process, right? Especially if the kids are working independently behind a closed door.
True. You don't hover the whole time.
Exactly. Or maybe parents struggle to accurately estimate the total time. Student reports, while, they might have their own biases, maybe even some exaggeration.
It took me hours.
Haha, right. But they might still be a more accurate reflection of the actual time and, maybe more importantly, the effort invested. It really underscores the importance of the student's own perception and engagement with the task.
That makes sense. Okay, what about different subjects? Like, does homework help more in math than in reading? Or does it matter how achievement is even measured, say, class grades versus those big standardized tests?
That's a good question. The good news here, for simplicity perhaps, is that the general association between homework and achievement was pretty robust across different subjects like reading and math, and even when they combined multiple subjects.
It's fairly consistent.
Fairly consistent. Now, there were some minor differences that popped up in specific statistical models, like maybe a slightly stronger link for class grades than for standardized tests, or for math compared to reading in some cases. But these differences were consistently small. And they often disappeared when they used more conservative statistical approaches. So the main takeaway is the link is generally there across core subjects. However, they did note there's less data available for subjects like science or social studies, so it's a bit harder to draw really strong conclusions there.
Got it. And the question I know every student and parent listening wants the answer to, is there an optimum amount of homework? Is more always better? Pile it on.
The research strongly suggests that no, more is definitely not always better. It's not a simple linear relationship where more homework equals more learning indefinitely.
Okay, so there's a limit.
Yes. One study they looked at, focusing on 12th graders, found the strongest relationship between homework and achievement for students doing between 7 and 12 hours of homework per week.
7 to 12 hours a week. So roughly 1 to 2 hours a night, maybe.
Roughly, yeah. After that, students doing 13 to 20 hours a week still saw benefits, but here's the ticker. Beyond 20 hours a week, which is averaging more than, say, 3 or 4 hours a night.
That's a lot.
It's a ton. For those students, the relationship between homework and achievement was actually similar to those doing very little homework, like maybe 1 to 6 hours a week.
So it drops off, or even goes backwards.
It suggests diminishing returns, absolutely. There seems to be a sweet spot. For high school students, maybe somewhere around 1.5 to 2.5 hours per night seems optimal based on this. Too much homework can definitely dilute its effectiveness and potentially become counterproductive, leading to stress, fatigue, burnout.
Which connects back to the concerns raised by Professor Pralvik.
Exactly. It supports the idea that quantity isn't the only thing that matters, and maybe not even the most important thing.
Okay, beyond grades and test scores, what about other outcomes? Did the meta-analysis look at things like, does homework affect a student's attitude toward school, or perhaps even their behavior?
They did look into that a bit. 5 studies included in the analysis found a small but statistically significant positive correlation between the amount of time spent on homework and students' overall attitudes toward school.
Well, that's interesting. So, doing homework might actually make kids like school more, slightly.
It's a correlation, so we can't say it causes it, but there's a positive link there, which is encouraging. On the flip side, when they looked at conduct problems, the results were inconsistent, no clear pattern.
Okay.
But here's what's really important, and maybe surprising. Many of the potential non-academic consequences, both positive and negative, that people often talk about regarding homework.
Like developing self-direction, or time management skills, or the downsides like physical fatigue, lack of playtime.
Precisely. All those things listed in the research literature. Most of them have actually never been rigorously tested empirically.
Really, all that debate and no hard data.
Not much, no. They remain areas that are really ripe for future research. We assume these effects happen, but the direct evidence is thin.
Wow. Okay, so given all this really nuanced data, homework helps older kids more. There's an optimal amount. The purpose might matter more than we think. It's really no surprise that educators are constantly exploring different ways to approach learning, right? It's clear that the traditional model might not be the be-all and end-all.
Exactly. The conversation is shifting, and one prominent alternative approach we see gaining traction is project-based learning. You often hear it called PBL.
PBL, right. Tell us a bit more about that.
It emphasizes hands-on, collaborative projects that are deeply engaging for students. So instead of just memorizing facts for a test, students might work together to design a sustainable community garden or research and propose solutions to a local pollution.
So learning by doing, basically.
Very much so. It really fosters critical thinking, enhances teamwork skills, and importantly, makes learning feel relevant to the real world. It moves beyond just rote memorization.
That sounds good. What other alternatives are out there?
Well, we also hear a lot about flipped classroom.
Flipped classrooms. Okay. How does that work?
The basic idea is that students get the initial exposure to new material at home, often through watching videos or doing assigned readings, before they come to class.
So they learn the basics outside class.
Right. Then the valuable class time itself is used for more interactive things, discussions, problem-solving workshops, hands-on activities, getting help from the teacher. This can significantly reduce the need for traditional practice homework because that deeper work happens collaboratively in the classroom.
Interesting. And you also mentioned personalized learning.
Yes, and that's a broader approach, really. It focuses on tailoring instruction, the pace, the style, the content to individual student needs and interests. When learning is personalized, those one-size-fits-all assignments naturally become less necessary or appropriate.
So it seems the overall goal here isn't necessarily about completely eliminating homework across the board,
Not always, no.
but maybe integrating it much more strategically, making it more purposeful.
That's exactly it. The key strategies seem to revolve around making sure any homework assigned directly aligns with specific, clear learning objectives. Absolutely no busy work.
Purposeful.
Purposeful. Also, using more project-based assessments instead of just tests, and offering flexibility in how assignments can be completed to accommodate diverse learning styles and those varying home environments we talked about.
Right, the equity piece. So it sounds like the teacher's role becomes even more critical, maybe more complex in this evolving landscape. They're not just assigning work from a textbook anymore.
Absolutely. Their role is huge. Teachers need to be constantly assessing student understanding and adapting their approach. Providing targeted support and guidance for each student becomes key.
And assuring assignments are genuinely purposeful.
Genuinely purposeful and aligned with real educational goals. And, this isn't always easy. It involves navigating potential resistance to change.
From whom?
Well, sometimes from educators who are used to traditional methods, but also sometimes from students and parents who are just accustomed to homework being a certain way.
Change is hard.
Change is hard. And teachers also have to be creative with resource constraints to implement some of these newer, maybe more involved models effectively. It requires support and professional development.
What a deep dive this has been. It's just abundantly clear that the homework dilemma is far more complex than a simple yes or no. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all answer.
Not at all. We've seen that while homework can indeed boost academic achievement, particularly for that immediate understanding and skill reinforcement, like on unit tests,
Right, the short-term games.
its effectiveness isn't uniform across the board. The positive impact is definitely strongest for secondary school students.
Much less so for younger kids.
Much less so. And crucially, there's a sweet spot for the right amount. More is not always better.
And that finding about the student's own perspective mattering so much that their reports of time spent correlate more strongly with achievement than parent reports, that's really telling, isn't it?
It really is. It emphasizes the importance of their internal engagement, their perception of the work. And looking back at those historical swings in public opinion, the ongoing debates today, and the rise of these alternative learning models like PBL and flipped classrooms,
Yeah.
it all just underscores that homework is fundamentally a tool.
Just a tool.
And like any tool, its value depends entirely on its thoughtful, strategic, and appropriate application. You wouldn't use a hammer to saw wood, right?
Right. Hopefully not. So here's a provocative thought, maybe, for you listening to mull overs as you go about your day. Considering everything we've unpacked, the research on grade level differences, that optimal amount, the rise of project-based and personalized learning, how might you redefine homework to best support learning? Whether it's for yourself or for the young people in your life, for a truly future-ready education.
Yeah, think about what genuinely reinforces understanding and builds skills without causing that unnecessary stress or burnout. And maybe, how can we get better at measuring the diverse benefits of learning things like collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, beyond just those traditional achievement scores? How do we make learning activities outside the classroom purposeful, engaging, and truly equitable for everyone?
Lots to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope this exploration empowers you to see homework not just as, a chore to be endured, but as a dynamic and evolving aspect of education, one that's full of possibilities if we approach it thoughtfully.